It's the Linux Zoo crew on Spatry's Cup of Linux, and let me tell you what, we've got all seats full. We've got a lot of hot mouths here, and we are going to be talking Linux. And before we get started, I'd like to pass the mic over to our wonderful show host, Pingcasts, and he will introduce everybody that will be speaking tonight.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're ready for another cup of Linux, another bowl of Linux soup. We're right here. We have with us discussing things tonight Andy, Edward, Lixer, Up the Chip, Setkeh, Spatry are my co-host, and he is the list of people speaking. Of course, we have some other people in here listening, but those will be the only ones speaking. I will now pass the mic back over to Spatry.
I'd like to give a hearty thanks to Setkeh for all of his wonderful talents in coding. He managed to rig everything up to where people in the lounge could actually listen in without having to be in the same room at the same time. I thought that was a really nice touch, and I'd also like to thank Voltem, the founder of the Linux distro community, and unfortunately he's at work and he couldn't be present with us today. But we wish him well, and for those of you who are listening in along on IRC, you're welcome to post your comments at any time, because this show is about you guys tonight. This is going to be a free-form conversation, and pretty much we're just going to be discussing a lot of the things that are on the mind of people on IRC here. And the one thing that caught my eye today was a number of people were having some issues with the new Ultimate Edition 3.2. Now, I tried to install this in a virtual machine myself, and I found that the installer would freeze up on me. And I've also spoken to other people that have had good results with this. First, I'd like to speak with one of you guys who has had good results with this. I believe OptiChip had mentioned some work on had mentioned that he had that running. Is that correct?
Not really good results. I took about an hour and 45 minutes to install the first time on my work machine with a VM. It seemed to take a real long time trying to go out and update, even after the install, at least 5 different repositories that it kept trying to add multiple packages from. It just didn't work right.
And that was an issue that I was encountering as well. Towards the end of the install, it just seemed to hang and do nothing, and the installer was running for a good hour and a half. And most Linux distributions, when I'm installing them in the virtual machine, usually take about a half hour. Now, Edward, on the other hand, says, don't get me started on Ultimate Edition. Why is that, Edward?
Because I had the same issue. I got it all the way up to copying files to about 3/4 of the way, and then I got an error message saying about input-output error, and I tried it on actual hardware on my laptop, and it just wouldn't work. I even just booted up Ultimate Edition doing start the installer rather than start the live CD graphical user interface, and it just wouldn't work at all. I've tried it in a virtual machine, and it's just really sluggish. It doesn't seem to want to respond. They've done something to mess it up. I don't know what they've done.
Now, I'm going to have a review coming up on this, but I'm actually going to have to review it in live CD mode, unlike other versions where I was able to install it and have all the 3D effects running. But the main point behind this distribution is being able to have a operating system that literally has something for everyone installed on it, and I like the concept behind that. But unfortunately, this one just doesn't seem to work out properly, and mainly it gives me a feeling that they kind of rushed this one out the door, because with version 3.1 that came out like 2 weeks ago, I think, and I did a review on that, and I thought they did a magnificent job on it. That one was based on Mint, and then we have one based on 11.10, and this also includes GNOME 3. It's got a fallback mode. It also has Unity 3D with the Compiz effects, supposedly, and I saw the pictures. It looked promising, but I think they might need to look at this one over and maybe put out a point release on this, or maybe even put some some kind of support on their forum. Okay, and OptiChip mentioned that he had tried this on 2 different machines, and the same effect for him was on both installs. Were these identical machines, or were they different types of hardware that you were dealing with, OptiChip?
Both i7 processor machines, both older i7 processors. Neither one of them wanted to do the install the right way. I was offered a suggestion on trying to install it by booting into GNOME Classic and disabling all 3D effects to see if that would actually help the process. It did seem to help a little bit on actually booting up the live, but other than just getting to the screen, it was very unresponsive at all. It didn't really do anything.
Did it pop up any errors? I noticed Edward was asking that.
I didn't get any errors with my install on the one at the office. The one at the office did take... I actually let it go, and it took an hour and 45 minutes. It got to the end of the install, and I was unable to click the reboot button and had to force quit my X session and have it relaunch. And then I was able to actually boot it in the VM, but once it was booted, it didn't really do anything there either.
Okay, and a question I had asked Edward earlier, because he was encountering an issue, was, did you check the MD5 sums on the ISO image that you downloaded?
I didn't check them on mine, no.
Okay. Edward stated that he did, and he had an issue, and I always check the MD5 sums before installing them in my virtual appliances as well. Okay. Some people have had issues, some people were able to get it working. Pingcasts, you were about to chime in. What did you have?
I was just about to say, I don't really do the whole MD5 something, although I have never had a corrupted ISO, that's why.
And Setkeh had a comment.
Well, this sort of problem where things either take really long time to happen, like installing and what have you. I can understand that it's designed, Ultimate Edition is designed to be a very visually pleasing distro, but I've, across a lot of experience, any ISO image of any distro that I've downloaded that's over 800-900 megabytes has generally always had a problem. As far as installing or, something breaking after the install, corrupt ISOs, all that sort of stuff. And that's part of the reason why I've always, gone back to building the system back up from an Arch base or something like that, because I can add all those visually pleasing effects later and still have the entire operating system installed in, an hour or two without having any of these sorts of problems.
Bingo! Yes, being able to build your own distribution from scratch and then being able to add all the effects at a later time is always a better option for a number of people. But, not everybody is power users. A lot of these newcomers to Linux are attracted by the eye candy. They want to try the latest and greatest features, but don't want to go mucking about with the different codes. So then you have these different distributions that are made available, such as PingIOS, for instance, and I highly recommend that to a number of people. And then, of course, there's Cinnamon that just came out that has some appealing effects as well. And these are really good for newcomers.
Well, those effects also not only cost us space, it also costs us resources too. So, I mean, I'm an open box user. You guys know I love open box. I'm not running on my desktop. I use it quite a bit on my laptop. And I can get it pretty visually pleasing without using Cairo Comp Manager or some other effect manager. It can still look nice, and it doesn't take up the same space or resources as all these Comp-Tiz effects and fire going across the screen and whatnot.
Now, personally, I haven't encountered very many issues with ISO images that are over 2 gigs in file size. And Edward, I know he likes to try out a lot of different distributions, and a lot of these are well over 2 gigs in file size. Tell us about that, Edward.
Well, there's obviously, like you mentioned, there's PingIOS, then there's Sabian, there's Mandriva, there's Torox, there's Cahill OS, Ultimate Edition, Megea, Zorin, Frugalware. All these are well over 2 gig, and most of them I have no issues with. The only ones I've had issues with is, like you say, Ultimate Edition and SATI, but I think that's the driver issue. But it's not all massive ISOs cause problems. They just have a lot of stuff on. That's why they're always slow, because they're just bloated with everything that's out there.
Lixer, what have you got?
Sometimes it's not just the size, but it can depend on the download. And I've had many problems where, you know, when you're just downloading the ISO, there might be a corruption while it's getting the file, and then that usually contributes to why the ISO doesn't boot up right.
Something to consider when you're choosing the right distribution for you. However, some of these distributions that were mentioned, such as the Zorin, such as the Mandriva, these are distributions that are tailored for beginners. And a lot of these distributions, though, are well thought out. They have huge teams of people working on these things, making sure that everything will work out of the box for multiple different platforms. Now, it's impossible to get them working for every single platform that's out there. But the thing is, sometimes you run into a few nickels here and there, so I'd have to agree.
Well, yeah, and it's not like I'm insinuating that all distros that have an ISO of over 2 gig are going to cause issues. That's not quite it at all. It's just out of personal experience. Like a lot of these distros that have been named, I can say that I've tried them, and there's only really been a few that I haven't had problems with. I mean, if I sat down and actually got right into it, it's probably, something incredibly simple as far as the problem goes, like installs hanging or something like that. It's usually just something's getting stuck somewhere because of something. So it could be something as silly as, and we get this on in the XIRC a lot, the install hanging because people haven't given enough space for their boot partition. It's little things like that. But the other thing I also look at is, if you're going to do a distro like this, there has to be some sort of fail-safe to stop user error, especially from causing problems like this to happen, because the user's probably not going to figure it out straight away, and then they're going to get frustrated, and they're not going to want to come back to that distro.
You make a good point on that. And by the way, that was Setkeh just speaking for all the listeners out there. And Setkeh is someone I have come to know who really knows his stuff when it comes to Linux. And yes, I have encountered this from time to time using various remixes, or homebrews, if you want to call them, where these distributions come out, and usually it'll be one little thing that unless you go on the forums and find out what it is, you're not going to really go far with the distribution. You're going to end up tossing that one aside and trying a different one. So I'd have to agree with you there.
Yeah, exactly right. And it really doesn't take a great deal to turn someone off. It's surprising how small a detail can turn someone off a distro. And everything's evolving these days, and our hardware's getting better, our internet connections are getting faster. Processing power is like the worries of not being able to process something is almost non-existent these days, unless you're talking about high-end servers. So these 2 gig distro, I can see a lot more of them happening, and becoming a lot easier to use, download, have access to, install, have you. But I think there's and I understand that a lot of thought goes into them, but I think sometimes, especially, they're trying to be a little bit too pleasing. Oh wow, there's a new GNOME or something like that. We better get out. We better slap together a release and get it out there. And sometimes, a lot of the time I find, especially with forks and things like that, that releases can be quite rushed, which is also another reason why I tend to steer away from them and stick with rolling release. Because sometimes, and it doesn't necessarily always happen, but yeah, sometimes you get that one that's quite rushed, and you go, oh, why am I using this distro?
Yeah, really. Well, I have to agree with you on the rolling release. I think half the people in this room have already tried Arch or some rolling release distribution, and they're quite pleased with it. Now, I'd like to move the subject on a little bit here. We were talking about Ultimate Edition, which is based on Ubuntu, but Timmy mentioned that he'd like to talk a little bit about the Ubuntu server package selection. Why don't you tell us about that, Timmy?
Yeah, basically what I'm saying is that when you install Ubuntu server, you get to this package selection screen where you can basically choose whatever packages or package sets that you want to install. And I think that might actually be a solution to some of the problems that people are facing with corrupt ISOs and such, because if you get that sort of package selection when you install, it will actually grab the packages clear from the internet and install them while you're running the live CD. So it wouldn't be like that big of a problem, the corrupt ISO. I think maybe it's something to keep in mind for the people designing distros out there. Then again, all of the newbies out there won't really know what packages or package sets they want to install. So for all of those Ubuntu and Pingcasts people, that might be something you don't really want.
Well, package selection is always a big thing, so you know, you can add all these sorts of features and, you know, add package selection and stuff like that, but 9 times out of 10 what they're going to do, and this happens with a lot of software, is they're going to have, you know, the manual custom way of you can go through and select your packages and what have you, but there's also going to be the custom express install, which just slaps everything in, and a lot of users are just going to go, well, I'm going to be lazy and just go the express install, which in fact has increased the size of the ISO and hasn't really eliminated the problem.
Well, yeah, but if you get the packages with something like apt-get or pacman, it'll like do a sanity check of the packages and see that they're actually whole and that you get everything that you're asking for. So I'm thinking it could eliminate some of the ISO corruption problems.
But from a beginner's standpoint, this would be a nightmare doing what you're suggesting. I think that's the point that was being brought across.
What about downloading packages later? All I can have to say about those is if you could get wireless working, you know, because not all of us are able to wire our internet connection. You know, go through the install and then have the packages downloaded during access packages downloaded during the install. Would that make any difference?
Well, see, the thing is, especially with the bigger distros, downloading one slab of 2.2 gigabytes is fine, and when you look at it, not a lot of people have, you know, super fast high-speed broadband. Like there's quite a few Linux users that don't. So downloading this one 2.2 gigabyte file, they probably just like throw it in a torrent client and leave it for a few days. And that way, when it is finished downloading, it's finished downloading. And when you start doing like talking about a net install, which is essentially what you're getting at, that 2.2 gig is still going to take a really long time to come down, and their computer's going to be, you know, they'll probably be able to use bits and pieces of it, but it's going to be rendered essentially useless until you've got everything that you need installed, or everything that you want installed, because until everything's installed you can't unlock apt or pacman or yum or anything like that, because when they're working they're locked. You can't touch their process unless you kill it.
Alright, check this out. For those of you who don't know who Popey is, that's Alan Pope, and he is in the IRC room right now, and I have asked him to actually come in and join us, and he would really be a really good person to speak to to address the Ubuntu issues. And while we're waiting on him, let's go ahead and jump over to another topic, and we can revisit this one here. Another thing I've noticed that's popping a lot in the news lately is the new Windows 8. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have had a chance to look at it or even try it, but a lot of people have expressed a lot of grief with the way that the system appears.
Okay, so like we all know that I'm not the biggest Windows man, but Windows. I do like to follow their work, so when Windows 8 developer preview came out, I downloaded it and had a play around with it and wasn't overly impressed. And then Microsoft released the consumer preview, and that has significantly improved the way Windows 8 is, what they're proposing is going to work. My experience, I mean, I can understand a lot of people having quite a few issues with it because they did change a fair bit aesthetically. So there's no start menu anymore. The file browser looks the same. You've still got My Computer and all that sort of stuff. But I think the thing they've really tried to hit off the mark, and so that it's super ready for it if they can get it to work, is Windows 8 ARM. And it looks and it feels very mobile, so I think I can see like netbooks and things like that, it'd be really good. Only problem is it's typical Windows, and it is quite resource intensive. It does like to hog the resources, but on the same note, it's very snappy in the interface. So on a general whole, I would say that they've done a pretty good job with it. There's still obviously a bit more work to go into it, but so far it's looking really nice, and they're actually redeeming themselves as far as they've been working over the last 400 years. Good one, crap one, good one, crap one. I think this one is actually going to hit its mark and be a good one.
Interestingly enough, Starduck has released a new plugin for Windows 8 which now will bring the start menu back. However, it still looks like the wretched Metro interface. And then there was another program that Total OS Today was telling me about that brings back the Windows 7 start menu, but I forgot the name of it. But with these coming into play here, they may actually be able to get some desktop usability out of this thing.
I was just going to say Windows, the Metro, it's like the whole GNOME and Unity thing, but the Windows is more, they have the desktop market. They don't have the mobile device, area. I think they should really focus on a desktop interface.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
OptiChip says they even have Metro on the server. How funny is that?
Well, that's horrible.
I will say that they do have a lot of cool tools and cool utilities for the server version, but still, the key to me not liking the Metro interface is when Windows 8 boots up and you have to use your mouse and you slide up the screen so that you can log in, and then it takes you to the Metro desktop and you cannot move the mouse to slide the desktop over. Drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Yes, that is one thing that drove me mental, was every time, because it looks so mobile, it looks like it belongs on a tablet. You think, you just drag it along, but it doesn't work like that. You still actually have to physically go down to the bottom with the mouse, click on the slider, and slide it manually instead of being able to flick your mouse. That really annoyed me. And if they add the feature so that you can just click anywhere in Metro and flick the screen, it would be a lot better.
You thought GNOME and Unity were bad for all the people out there who don't like it?
Well, I'm guessing that they probably, in the tablet version, I'm sure that works fine, and I'm sure that there's going to be a plugin soon that they will release to allow Anywhere that you click, you will be able to slide.
Oh, right. At this time, I'd like to welcome a very special guest to our show. Alan Pope popped in to say hi to us, and earlier we were just talking about Ubuntu and possibly integrating some of the packages from Ubuntu server over to some of the other desktops that are available out there.
Oh, I like Edward's comment. Windows 8 Desktop Edition, price $1 million. That's about right.
About right for Microsoft.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And I also heard that they're going to have multiple editions of Windows 8. Like they're going to have like a Home Premium and then a Basic Edition. And then
9 editions allegedly.
Yeah.
And everybody's just going to torrent the Ultimate.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, we've got a surprise guest that just popped in. Alan Pope from Canonical, who is a engineer, has joined our conversation. Welcome, Mr. Pope. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I just finished drinking in the St. Patrick's Day celebrations, and I thought I'd pop in and say hello to everyone.
Well, hello. You know, it's funny that you had just popped into IRC when we were talking about possibly integrating, some components of Ubuntu server into some of these other distributions that people might want to download for the packages and that sort of thing. And there was an interesting conversation that was going on back and forth about that. And maybe you guys might want to shed some light on what we were discussing.
Yeah, well, actually, my train of thought was that the Ubuntu server package selection screen, where you select like these package sets, where you get like if you want to run a LAMP server or anything, you get all of those packages. I was thinking that if that thing was in other distributions, it would eliminate some of the hazards with people getting corrupt ISOs and such, because we all know that most users don't check their MD5 sums. But while we could get Pacman or apt-get or whatever to do a sanity check on the packages, it could eliminate some of the broken ISOs that we get out there.
Do we get a lot of problems with broken ISOs? I know I haven't had one recently.
No, I haven't either, but on the forums and such, there's a lot of arguing about whether the users have checked their MD5 sums or not. I've actually seen quite a lot of these posts where the ISOs were corrupt.
Is that where people have ropey connections, or they have to keep retrying downloads when they've got a very slow connection and it cuts out partway through, or if they're on a dodgy wireless connection or something like that? Is that the kind of reason why people get dodgy, corrupt ISOs?
Yeah, I'm assuming it's something like that.
Oh, Up the Chip brought up a good point. Why not just include an MD5 sum check in the install script?
Yeah, that'd be cool. We have a CD checker. When you boot, one of the options is to check the CD. I don't think it does an MD5 sum, but I know it does some checking.
Interesting thought there. Now earlier I had tried a new distribution. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Alan, but Ultimate Edition just released a new version based off of Ubuntu 11.10. And I noticed a lot of people were having problems, and myself included, with getting this installed and that sort of thing. And that's what kind of prompted this discussion of being able to have the checking and that sort of thing going on.
Yeah, I am aware of Ultimate Edition. It's been around a fair while, and it spawned from a tool. I believe the developers behind Ultimate Edition are the same guys behind, or originally the same guys behind, a tool called Automatics, which some of you may remember from the distant past, maybe?
It sounds familiar to me, yes.
Yeah, a long while ago, when probably about 3, maybe 4 years ago, some guys got together and developed a tool called Automatics, and the goal of it was to make it easier to install software drivers and the latest NVIDIA drivers and all that kind of stuff. And I'll be honest with you, the code was really ropey, and we did some audits of it, and there's no way we would have put automatics in the repository. But the problem was a lot of users loved it, and the reason that they loved it is because they could run automatics and get the latest stuff in their, bog standard Ubuntu install. I think even Michael Dell on his blog mentioned automatics, which is kind of surprising.
And the thing is, the power user like me that's out there who wants to run bleeding edge everything would find this to be wonderful at the expense of maybe having a few little nicks and pings in the system.
Yeah, and one of those nicks and pings is upgrades. We used to find in support in Ubuntu, when people installed automatics and then used that to install video drivers and other software and all kinds of stuff and tweaks, they would then be happy using that system for months, and then maybe 4 or 5 months later they might try and upgrade their system using the standard Ubuntu upgrade system, the update manager, and it would fail, and we'd get the blame. Ubuntu would get the blame because they'd installed something that was a little bit dodgy and monkeyed around with packages, and it was very hard for us to debug what had gone on and what had happened. But on a significant number of occasions, it was tools like automatics, these tools that play around with the list of packages on the system and install packages from random third-party repositories. That stuff can break upgrades. And I know it seems like a cop-out, and it sounds like we're placing the blame for broken upgrades on third-party software, but that really did happen, and we got a lot of problems with that. And that's why I tend to steer clear of things like Ultimate Edition, because I'm unclear on the quality control there.
Well, it's not your fault if they're crapping around with the system. It's their system. It's their fault if it breaks, because it's their distro.
Sure, but they come to us for support.
Exactly, but the thing is, they also have their own separate support forums where they, and you believe it or not, for issues that I've had in Linux Mint or PingCasts or any of the other Ubuntu-based derivatives, I've tried. I've actually been able to find answers on the Ultimate Edition forums. And I actually have a custom search that actually polls all of the Ubuntu-based distribution forums to get the answers I'm looking for.
Sure, and there's a lot of room in the market for lots of different distros and custom distros and distros that have loads of extra packages on them and all kinds of fancy extra stuff like custom themes and dark backgrounds and all the things that techie people kind of look for. And I realised that techies kind of appreciate those other derivatives of Ubuntu, and they are most welcome to exist. It's not like we go out of our way to try and stop derivatives existing. There's loads of them, and they're very welcome. My worry is when people come directly to Ubuntu and Canonical for support with derivatives, and we honestly can't help them because they've got such a customized system that it's very difficult for us to pinpoint exactly what the problem is. And that's when people have to go to the specific forums for Ultimate or Mint or whatever these derivatives are.
All right. Well, it's a separate distro. I don't think you should be held accountable for somebody else's work.
I agree.
Well, see, that's the thing, and a lot of newer users, and this is where I have my little Ubuntu hates on, is because, in my opinion, and this is strictly my opinion, and it has nothing to do with anyone else here, I think they made it too easy, and then it also made it too easy to make these derivatives. So when these sorts of problems do occur, it's not Ubuntu's fault directly, but indirectly I think they do play a part in their own problems there.
Yes, fair comment.
All right, now I have to ask you a question. I hate to change the subject on you here, but Alan, have you had a chance to look at the new Windows 8? And if you have, what are your impressions on it?
I actually haven't.
Okay.
I have VM and and I have looking around me right now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 machines that all run Ubuntu, and I wouldn't give any of them up for Windows 8.
Okay, I had to ask.
I couldn't get it running in a virtual machine either. I tried. It kept it in some error. I think the snippet of code meant it was some sort of RAM issue.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what reason there was, but I didn't want to spend more than about 10 minutes trying to get the thing booted. It felt like, you know, a Linux distro from 10 years ago.
Of course, it just spits out a bunch of numbers rather than an actual message.
What really gets me is how Windows 8 copies Linux in so many different ways with the hot corners they have now. And, you know, even the Metro interface is a copy of Android's slide interface, you know?
Oh, somebody seems to have had success with Ultimate Edition. I was just going to comment real quick.
Yeah, I think the hot corners came from the Mac originally, didn't they? OS X had the, you know, throw the mouse into one corner to start the screensaver or throw it into another corner for something else.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, that's correct.
Originally, I came from the Mac world, and yeah, they had those. I remember. I think that was in like 10.04. Sorry.
I have no problem with them using it because that's what it's all about. I would just have a problem with them claiming it's their own work.
Yeah,
that's the thing, like, and the reason why Microsoft has started adopting these sorts of things is because the market for these aesthetic things is so huge at the moment. It's massive.
Yeah, I think we're all going in a similar direction, really. When you look at OS X, you search for stuff. You know, you use Spotlight to search for stuff. If you look at Windows 7 and I presume Windows 8, you search. You know, you hit the Windows key and you type Paint, and it finds the Windows Paint program. On Android, you know, search is a big thing for Google, and on the iPhone, you slide one way and you type something and you find stuff. I think we're all heading in roughly the same direction. We might be doing things in slightly different ways, but I think we're all going, you know, roughly the same way. So it's kind of unsurprising that we're copying each other in some ways.
Well, yeah, plus it's also human nature to see or have a good idea, and then someone else to see that good idea and then go, I really like that idea, but I think I can improve it and do it slightly differently. So, and that's where all this sort of stuff starts happening.
There's also innovation. You can take that idea and make it better.
Exactly, and that's what you could argue the GNOME guys did with Unity. They saw Unity and then decided they thought they could do better with GNOME Shell.
Wait, sorry. I thought Mark Shuttleworth made that of a disagreement with the GNOME devs.
Yeah, but it's not innovating when they copy somebody else's idea, make it better, put a patent on it, and then start suing people for it.
That's a very good point.
Well, yeah, then you get in the whole legal structure and all that sort of stuff. It kind of, you know, favors that behavior.
Yeah, and I'm no expert on law, so.
Yeah,
I don't think too many of us are.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer.
Okay, but at any rate, by bringing up the Windows
programs bots at the last minute.
By bringing up the Windows subject, I made the IRC people happy. They were asking when we were going to start hating on Windows again, so I think we've done enough with that for the time being.
So let me ask a question. What kind of hardware are you guys using? Are you using laptops, desktops, tablets? What are you guys using as your Linux machines of choice?
I have one desktop, one laptop. I have Pingcasts on my desktop, and I recently put Gen 2 on my laptop.
I'm using everything in between. I've got a notebook with 1 gig of RAM and an Intel Atom processor, which runs Arch Linux with awesome WinImager. And then I've got this desktop with an i7 2600K processor, 16 gigs of RAM, where I'm running Arch with E17. And then I've got this Dell Optiplex with a single core Intel processor that runs Ubuntu, I think, server.
battery show is powered by a compact Presario that's a single-core V140 processor with 8 gigs of RAM and an ATI processor on ATI video card. Nothing fancy, but it does the trick.
I was talking to somebody last night.
Setkeh versus Arch Linux is powered by like something along the lines of 14 desktops, 2 workstations, 4 laptops. One of my workstations has dual Xeons in it with 32 gig of RAM. My workstation that I'm sitting on right now has a AMD FX 8-core processor, 4 gigahertz per core or something along those lines anyway. 16 gig of RAM.
See here, I got about 3.2 gigahertz on my desktop, quad-core, 4 gig of RAM. My laptop is single-core, 2.10 gigahertz with 2 gig of RAM.
And my machine's custom has 8 gigs of RAM, an i5 2500K, with running around 3.30 gigahertz, and NVIDIA chipset.
So we've got everything from Intel, ATI, laptops, desktops, full range of kit, and lots of different distros. That's good to see. Oh
yeah, I'm an AMD guy, by the way, on both my machines.
AMD for the win.
Indeed. I'm a AMD NVIDIA man, and I get flamed for it all the time.
Well, I didn't have much choice on my laptop. When I was building my desktop, I saw the processor and it was a really good deal, so I got it. It was very good for what I paid for it.
You can't knock the value with the AMD chips. They do every bit as well as the Intels in my experience, and I've been building my own computers for years. And for the price, you just can't beat the performance that AMD has to offer.
NVIDIA is not all that bad either. Although some of their cards are not so great, but they have some.
The only thing that I find too different between the two, between Intel and AMD. I mean, the Intel ones, they perform really well, but there's no room for anything. You get them, and you're pretty much stuck with that chip. With the AMDs, in my experience anyway, they run a lot cooler, and You've got that overclocking room. They're almost designed to be overclocked, with very little modifications, unless you're doing something way out there. Like a buddy of mine, when the Phenoms first come out at 3.8 gigahertz, managed to clock his out to 12 gigahertz, but he had to, make some really retarded modifications to it. But you could on the default heatsink that come with the Phenom 2, we could clock it out to nearly 6 gigahertz before we started having heating issues with it, and they're just a phenomenal chip.
Yeah, I've noticed a little bit of heating issues, but I now have CPU cycling installed on my Arch system, and everything's working well now. It's not running quite as hot as it was running, so that is one drawback.
I think the only system I ever have that's the only 2 systems I've ever had heating issues with AMD chips in them is my 2 AMD laptops, and I'm not 100% sure why, but AMD laptops do always seem to run quite a lot hotter than their desktop counterparts.
Yeah, it just depends on the thing, really. I mean, with my system, I have a water cooler and 5 fans going off. So my machine doesn't run fairly hard. In my past experience with laptops, they just boil up with the GPU chips. They just get so hot you can't even put them on your lap anymore.
Oh yeah, Gen 2 really heats up my laptop. I'm surprised. I've really heated that thing up over the time I've had it. I'm surprised I haven't killed it.
And I haven't really noticed too much overheating issues personally on my hardware with any of the Ubuntu-based distributions. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, the other thing that I really like about the AMD chips is their thermal shutdown seems to have quite a lot more control, as well as it seems to be a lot more reliable. My fiance had 2 laptops. She's had 2 laptops, and the first one went into thermal shutdown, which was all well and good. It did what it was supposed to do, and it was an Intel, so it's thermal shutdown, all well and good, but it didn't. After that, it didn't thermal shut down again. It literally baked itself to death. The second one we've got it's thermal shut down 3 times now, but I don't really want to trust it as far as I can kick it. And she has a bad habit of leaving it turned on and sitting it on the couch or something like that.
Yeah, you really don't want to be using your hardware as a coffee warmer. Well, guys, we have just about run out of time. Alan, do you have any final thoughts? Tell us when is the next release of Ubuntu coming out, and what can we expect any differences that we're not seeing in the beta right now?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Next release of Ubuntu is the 26th of April, I think. And that's a Thursday, usually. And I think the key thing to note is we're really trying to focus on QA, quality and reliability. And a lot of focus has been done on multi-monitor stuff and trying to listen to and take into account a lot of user feedback. We get a lot of feedback. We know this. We get a lot of people who tell us Unity sucks and we hate Unity, and we understand that. But what's really helpful is people telling us exactly how Unity sucks so that we can figure out how to fix it. And that's what we're trying to do. So between now and the 26th of April, what we're trying to do is make sure that the desktop is super efficient and reliable and bulletproof, and the same goes for the server.
Well, I can say just from looking at the beta and doing a review myself that you're definitely heading in the right direction with this. I'm really liking how this is looking, and I can see where a lot of people are really going to be pleased with this new distribution you guys have coming out. Setkeh, what did you want to add to this?
I actually had a question regarding the last Ubuntu that came out, I think. Why was GNOME Shell taken out and Unity was left default and GNOME Shell moved to the repo, so you have to actually install it as a third-party thing? Was that just to cut down ISO size, or was there some other reason behind it?
So is your question essentially, why is Unity the default desktop?
Not necessarily. I can understand that. I mean, we're all moving in new directions, but why was GNOME Shell taken out of the base install? Like when the first couple of releases with Unity, you still had the option to go to GNOME Shell, but after that you didn't. With the last release, I think it was.
Okay, I understand. So actually, so the target has always been to go to Unity as the default desktop, but in the first release that Unity was available, which was 11.04, nearly a year ago, the 3D version of Unity, which we just generally call Unity, was ready. But the 2D version, which was optimized for machines that don't have 3D acceleration or are low CPU setups, wasn't ready. So that's why in 11.04 you ended up with the 3D desktop, as it were, is Unity, and the 2D desktop was what we call GNOME Classic, not GNOME Shell, really, it's GNOME Classic. And then in 11.10, which was the release that's the most recent release, Unity 2D was ready, the code was ready, and that's why the 3D version was the default desktop, and Unity 2D was the like secondary option if you had a non-3D accelerated desktop. GNOME Shell has never been on the CD, and it's in the repository for 11.10 and 12.04 as well. The reason why it's not on the CD is because we strongly believe that Unity is the right desktop. And as such, there's not really much point us putting other desktops on the CD. So the CD doesn't have KDE, it doesn't have XFCE on the CD. It's just got Unity 3D and Unity 2D. I hope that answers your question. If not, let me know and I'll clarify it.
Nope, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, though, Alan. I thought I was reading something in an article that you guys are actually bringing back the GNOME Classic, which will allow people to do the compiz effects and that sort of thing. Is there any truth to that, or was that just some hogwash I was reading online?
I've not seen that, and there's no reason why we would, in inverted commas, as you say, bring back GNOME Classic, because we believe that the way forward is Unity, and I appreciate that some people don't agree with that opinion, and the good news is for them, they can just apt-get install GNOME Shell or GNOME Legacy or whatever the package is called that lets you run other things, or as one of the other guys said, Awesome WM or XFCE, or that's the beauty of it, is in the repository there's all these different window managers and desktops that you could use. But we're firmly standing behind Unity, and we think that's the future. And I personally agree with that. And I can see why some people think in the short term it's not the right thing, and some people think it's broken, and some people think it doesn't work the way they work. That's fine, but in the long term, that's the way we're going, and I see no reason to think otherwise.
The thing I'll say about Unity, the thing that frustrates me about Unity is it takes a ridiculous amount of clicks to use the desktop. I used it in VirtualBox, and my hand was so tired because I haven't uploaded the video on it, but I was doing a video on it. My hand was so tired by the end of the screencast from all the clicking. Is there any way you guys can fix that, or you're trying to fix that? What are your plans on that?
I actually hear this a lot, and well, there's the facetious answer, which is take your hand off the mouse and put it on the keyboard, but because there's keyboard shortcuts for everything. But I'm interested to know in what way people believe that it's too clicky. There's too many clicks to get to stuff. I know if you took your hands off the keyboard and you solely operated with the mouse, I can see how that could probably be the case. But there are an amazing number of keyboard shortcuts that get you to stuff like super quickly.
Oh, I had no idea. Actually, now that you mentioned that, I might have to try it on my laptop or something and see how good it is keyboard oriented.
So the pro tip is install Ubuntu 12.04 and then hold down I'm loath to call it the Windows key, the super key. Hold that down, and an overlay appears on the screen that gives you a list of all the keyboard shortcuts, or the most useful keyboard shortcuts. And once you know those, you are golden. You're laughing. You can navigate the desktop like a boss, as they say.
So is this a keyboard-oriented desktop then?
Yeah, it's it's not keyboard only, that you can lift your hands off the keyboard and use the mouse as well. But I think the keyboard shortcuts really excel in making it easier to use and quicker to use. But that's just my experience, and I use Unity every single day. So yeah.
All right. Well, this has been an invigorating conversation. Unfortunately, folks, we have run out of time. I want to thank everybody who participated in this discussion today. Thank you, Mr. Pope, for jumping in. That was a surprise to see you come in to join us today.
Yeah, sorry for deviating the conversation to Ubuntu and Unity. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Actually, this was a free-form conversation based on things we were just seeing in the... this is something new that we thought we were going to try. We were just going to monitor all the conversation going on in the IRC room, and we were just going to comment based on what, you know, everybody was saying and that sort of thing. And I think this worked out quite well, actually. So yeah, I mean, this turned out really well. I've got well over an hour of footage here to go through and do some editing on this evening. I'd like to thank all of the participants who came in, and once again, I'd like to thank Setkeh for all of his hard work that he put into doing the back-end work, trying to get the sound working. We'll have it all sorted out next weekend, where then we can have people up in the lounge listening into the conversation while the participants of the show can be in the actual Cup of Linux room as we're doing here. But once again, thank you, all of you, for participating on the show today, and I will have links in the show notes for everybody so that you can see Pingcasts show, you can see Setkeh's show, you can see Mr. Pope's blog online. I will have links to all of that for you guys so you can check them out. They're well worth your time. Thank you all for listening. Google+, Facebook, and Twitter will keep you up to date every time I send a new video up to Spatry's Cup of Linux. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.